This is Defender Radio. Defender Radio is brought to you by the Association for the Protection of Fur-Bearing Animals.
It's the week of April 4th, 2017, and this is Michael Howie welcoming you to episode 423 of Defender Radio. Are you following me on Twitter, Instagram, or the new Defender Radio podcast Facebook page? If not, you really should be. That way you'd know we're now on Stitcher. You'd also get to read the tale of the creepy couch doll and my evil wife, see an adorable picture of Pigeon, my helper on this week's episode, and contribute to interview and video ideas. And starting next week, find out how you can win some prizes through Defender Radio exclusive contests. Head over to thefurbears.com and check out this week's Defender Radio blog to find all the ways you can follow the show. And if you're part of the Podern family community on Twitter, let me know and we'll connect. It's remarkable how significant an impact people have on the wildlife around them, even if it isn't always seen. Understanding our role and what we should do to help animals we see is also something we're not too clear on. Fortunately, we have some wonderful people in our communities who can help. Wildlife rehabilitators are ready for the influx of injured, orphaned, or ill babies they'll be seeing in the coming weeks. But a growing part of their work is to make sure their community is ready too. In Southern Ontario, registered rehabilitators are also facing the ongoing spread of rabies and distemper, deadly diseases that can ravage the animals. And in regions like Grimsby, the home of urban wildlife care, rapid development is creating problems in areas where animals once lived without ever being seen. These subjects, along with a few interesting anecdotes about a Headstones concert, squirrels that like to mock dogs, and the need to support our local wildlife rehabilitators were discussed when Defender Radio was joined by Urban Wildlife Care's Cara Contardi. Well, let's dive in. Could you maybe just tell us a little bit about UWC, how it got started, and sort of what the need is in the area?
The need is in the area. Okay. Well, because I'm kind of considered in the Niagara region because I'm in Grimsby, right? So we deal with a lot of the wildlife, all the way pretty much to Niagara Falls, and sometimes all the way to Mississauga, all down along the lake, kind of thing, because there really isn't anybody else, in the area, especially going towards Mississauga, too. It's a huge area to cover. But we're small potatoes, just like anybody else. I got certified with IWRC back in 1999 when I met Mary Catherine Kruziak, out of Niagara Wildlife Haven.
Is she still working?
She's still up in Welland. I think maybe, I don't think she is taking in animals. She might be. I haven't double checked with that. I'm not positive. She's had some issues, but she's still out there. She's still teaching all the OREN courses, she's still educating everybody, which is a beautiful thing. She mentored me, and she mentored quite a few of us in this area.
Oh, yeah, a lot of people I know in the region. Yeah. She's kind of the fairy godmother of wildlife rehab down this way.
Well, absolutely, Absolutely. She's got so much knowledge, because she's been doing it for so long, for sure. So then I got permitted by the M&R finally on my own, probably around 2005, I'm going to say it was. And as you know, wildlife rehabilitation isn't funded by the government, so I had to go and, I had to find somebody that could do the charitable paperwork and incorporate it and all that. And I was lucky enough to find somebody to do that for me without costing me an arm and a leg. So we got our charitable number, and because it's just pretty much me here. And somebody has to work full time to pay the bills and pay the mortgage because it's not funded, right? So that's probably why there aren't a lot of wildlife rehabilitation facilities, because it costs a lot of money to do, And a lot of these little wildlife rehabilitators, a lot of them do them out of their house, So So I finally did that.
Mm-hmm. There's only one big one now that I know of, and that's Toronto Wildlife Center.
No, it's pretty much me for sure. In Grimsby, we have Carol Racuto, of course, who has the Open Sky Raptor Foundation. She's just up the hill from me, which is pretty cool. So when the OPP and such call, with hawks and whatnot, I have Carol right there on the hill, kind of thing, who's been rehabbing diurnal raptors for over 25 years. So she's got a wealth of experience as well. And then, of course, we have the Owl Foundation in Vineland, right? So in our little area here, we're pretty blessed. And then, of course, I've got Chantal, who runs Hobbitsty, her own wildlife rehabilitation facility out in Jarvis. And so
I've taken 2 animals to her, actually.
Absolutely, yeah. So and Chantal's actually doing a pretty cool thing right now, where she's doing a little workshop for all of the public and for animal control officers and this kind of thing who might happen upon, injured and orphaned wildlife, and how to transport that, how to stabilize it before they get it to a rehab facility. So that was pretty cool of her to do as well.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting sort of topic too that I kind of wanted to segue into. Is this time of year, as you said when we first started talking, it's baby season.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And, even in my my neck of the woods in downtown Hamilton, I'm seeing just the activity, just like a flash, just all of a sudden.
Yeah.
There's more squirrels hitting the ground. There's more raccoons. There's more chipmunks. The falcons are out more. The little birds are coming back. Who are you seeing the most? Like right now, this sort of end of March, beginning of April, who's coming into your facility the most?
Okay, so here at Urban Wildlife Care, we take care of all the fur. I always say, we don't have the room to take care of songbirds and such, but our first babies of the season were baby raccoons. So and they were a week old. So those we have about 6 baby raccoons at the moment that have come in the last, I'm going to say, 5 days. And we got a little pinky squirrel about 3 days ago, and then yesterday, and this is something else we should talk about too, is as everybody's, spring is hitting and people are starting to look at their backyards and they're starting to clean up all the brush and they're starting to, unfortunately, cut down trees that they couldn't stand, okay? Unfortunately, we're getting, the 4 baby squirrels that came in yesterday were actually from a tree that was cut down, okay? Because the people didn't know that there was a nest of squirrels in the tree. And according to them, the mother was nowhere to be found, and that's how the babies end up coming into a rehabilitation facility. And then I just had somebody post on Facebook that the city of Hamilton took down a whack of trees in a park somewhere. So, that kind of stuff just makes my stomach turn too, because that, when the arborists all move in and such, then we're going to get more orphans than are needed, regardless of the ones that are being found in people's roofs, and people are starting to look around their houses and they're starting to see, that the roof vent's been torn off. And they're starting to see that, the fascia's ripped off. So, yeah, we're starting to see a lot of that. And that's how a lot of orphans come into a rehab facility that, have mothers, should probably be, and then we try and guide them, on how to reunite mom, with those babies. So.
And that's something I think too. Whenever I speak with wildlife rehabilitators, and this is going back now years when I was working in the newspaper business, I was astounded the first time I heard it. And for some reason, it continues to surprise me, even though it really shouldn't, that almost every case wildlife rehabilitators see has human activity somehow associated to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And there's it's unfortunate that and like how I found Mary Catherine, for instance, and I'm pretty sure that the majority of wildlife rehabilitators out there probably have similar stories where they were always that little kid. Whether or not you went into veterinary medicine or not, you were always that little kid that sort of found, that injured or orphaned, bird or whatever as a child that you would always bring home to mom. I think the majority of us have all those stories. But I can't remember where I was going with this.
It's already been a long week.
I tend to talk in circles. Yeah, it is. Yeah, this is only the beginning of the season. So normally, I think all of us have that sort of background, where we were sort of attracted to taking care of wildlife. And the thing is, when I found I didn't go into veterinary medicine. I actually went into fashion design, which is another story of mine. And so when I moved here to Grimsby, I actually found a yellow-shafted flicker, and that's how I met Mary. Back in 1990. I'm going to say it was 1998. And I do what everybody else does. You phone around to all the veterinarians, you phone around to all the humane societies, you phone around to all the animal control agencies, and even back then, back then was even worse. nobody took care of wildlife, right? Veterinarians, aren't even licensed to take care of wildlife. The only people who really are the authorized wildlife custodians. And so I had just happened to happen upon a veterinarian that knew of Mary out in Welland, and that's how I met Mary with this bird. And that's when Mary and I started talking, and she said that, IWRC, International Wildlife Rehabilitation Council, was coming across from the States, and she was hosting a course, and she goes, you should take this course, and that's how my interest in wildlife rehabilitation started. But having said that, the majority of Joe Blow public doesn't know when they do find a wild, an injured or orphaned wild animal or bird, they don't know where to go. They don't know where to call. And they'll make 5 million different phone calls trying to find a rehab facility, because you wouldn't know we existed until you happen upon something like that. You know what I mean? Like, nobody advertises. We don't advertise in the yellow pages that we take care of wildlife. Do you know? So it's really sort of luck of the draw. So we always try to, we always hope that people, when they Google wildlife, that our websites come up. There's another website called OntarioWildliferescue.ca where Sandy Donaldson has a listing of all of us on there from all over Ontario, where you can just click on the species that you found, and it sort of gives a listing of all the different rehabs, right? Which makes it a little easier for the public to find, the proper facility. So.
And you had mentioned when people come across animals and they're not sure what to do. And this is a subject that I'm relatively certain we could probably talk about without recovering ground for a week. But right now we're going to be seeing, as you said, the raccoons, the squirrels, bunnies, I think, probably soon too. Mm-hmm. And with a lot of these animals, I think the initial reaction to go and put them in a blanket and give them some water and wait and see what happens is what people have. It's that I'm going to be compassionate, I'm going to help this animal. But often that's really not what they should be doing. What should people be doing when they see individual or groups of small animals who are, in this case, let's say orphaned, or not orphaned, but alone?
Well, I guess it all depends on the situation, and I guess it all depends on the baby and what kind of baby it is. Like, for instance, if you've got a little pinky squirrel that's at the base of a tree, and the nest is 400 feet up, obviously the public aren't going to be able to get it back up into the nest. I mean, obviously we want the mothers to be able to take care of their own babies, right? So in which case you would want to keep that little baby warm, and the first thing you really should do is call a wildlife rehabilitation steps, if you're lucky enough to have any of our phone numbers. Or if you call, your local animal control, or if you call your local humane society, they should have all of our numbers as well to sort of guide you on what to do. For instance, in the cases of baby cottontails, we can go over this a million times over and over again, that dogs are going to obviously be curious enough to uncover a nest. Cottontails have nests right out in the middle of the front lawn. They don't care where they have their babies. And I think the thinking is just, what we do is normally tell people just to sort of keep the dogs away for at least 3 weeks until the babies are big and bad enough to get up on their own and start dispersing on their own, if you're lucky enough to do that. Some people put little chairs or barriers around the nest to allow mom to keep coming and going to feed those animals, right?
What about the squirrels and raccoons? Like, is there a standard procedure? And I know it's hugely unique. But is there sort of what questions would you ask someone if I called you and said, "There's a baby raccoon in my backyard"? Where do you kind of lead people to get the information you need? Okay,
so we sort of walk them through what to do with that baby raccoon. How big is the baby raccoon? How does the baby raccoon look? Is it injured? Is it dehydrated looking? In which case, these are the things that you have to factor in. If the animal's in distress, obviously it needs to come straight into a wildlife rehabilitation facility, right, to be taken care of. But if it's a healthy baby, if it's a baby that's just wandering and exploring its surroundings, that's kind of natural. If he's healthy looking, he's got glossy eyes, and then that's pretty common for babies to be out there wandering. And baby squirrels are the same way. When baby squirrels start coming down from the trees, it's not uncommon for them to run up to a human. And the calls that we always get, I'm sure everybody, is, this baby squirrel must have been raised by a human being because it ran right up my leg. Well, baby squirrels normally will do that just because they're curious. And I can guarantee you that mom's up in the tree shaking her head going, oh, God. Okay, so So, and in which case, a lot of these orphans come into a rehabilitation, facility mistakenly, because it could have just been left there. Leave them there and let mom take care of her babies. But keep an eye on the situation and make sure that that baby's still not sitting there at 2:00 in the morning at the base of the tree and mom hasn't come to get him. In which case now you got kind of a situation happening. It's like, why hasn't mom come to get that baby? See what I mean? And that's when you kind of have to intervene. So otherwise it'll be somebody's food.
Well, and that's a question I will ask myself sometimes. When you see an animal maybe having trouble getting around, or I think an example maybe like a bird that's having trouble, and you wonder, is it our responsibility to intervene, or should we allow this to be part of that natural system of prey and predation?
We have lost so much habitat, and there's so much habitat that's lost. There's so many different accidents that happen, lawnmowers, you name it, cars and such, because of human encroachment, right? Because of greed, basically. All of our green spaces are all townhouses now. All our farmers' fields are townhouses. I get people who call me that there's a coyote, sitting on their back deck. Why? Because he used to live there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, we're not rehabilitators because we believe in that. We're there because every animal deserves our compassion and our respect. And, it's not their fault that their habitat is dwindling, and that they're moving into more and more space that humans are living in. And granted, the reason why I called urban wildlife care is because, yes, our wildlife is urban. It lives among us, right? And so it always surprises me when people will call and in shock and say that there's a fox in my backyard. And then you're kind of like, well, yeah, he probably lives behind the bush in your backyard.
Well, and Grimsby's a fascinating little area for this, and I think it is because, so I'm in Hamilton, and for people who aren't familiar with the sort of geography of Southern Ontario, I'm in Hamilton, which is sort of the big city on the southwest corner of Lake Ontario, which then goes straight east. Along that lake, like a 15-20 minute drive on the highway, you hit Grimsby, which is both a small town, a very typical small town, but spreads out into really what have become suburbs. From
even more so.
Yeah, it's some that have been there for 20 or 30 years, and some that are some of them are. It's scary to me.
Yeah.
Like around Casablanca.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're all skyscrapers and.
Yeah, and it literally looks like a Lego set someone just put down in the middle of a field. So there's this rapid growth happening on land that used to be farm fields or used to be sort of meadow type forest combos. And then, of course, further east you have the vineyards, which are some of the best in the world right now. And it puts people in Grimsby in this very peculiar situation where people who live there, and I saw this, I'm from Oakville originally, so we kind of saw this at one point too. People who have lived there for a long time say, well, I never saw these animals before. But they're not realizing that all of that land around them that used to be green space is suddenly houses.
Yeah.
So those animals are they're finding places to live.
They're all being displaced.
Yeah, and is that something that you are dealing with frequently? Is people not realizing that these animals have always been here, but we're just taking away their hiding places?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's all part of what a wildlife rehabilitator does too. It's not just, taking care of the animals and making sure they're, released back into the wild and such. It's also helping the public coexist. And coexist is a huge word, right? And that's what you guys do. And for bear defenders, is educate, and, that they live amongst us. And so it really is a matter of, reminding them that this is why this is happening, and are you okay with that? Are you okay with that fox, coming into your backyard? And if you're not, these are the ways to deter it, if you do have pets that are humane, to make it move on. Well,
and that's I just let my dogs out, and the squirrels remember once again why they don't like our backyard. Squirrels, I have a love-hate relationship with squirrels. Living in a city, like I know squirrels they're wonderful little social animals. I love watching them. I watch them all day while I'm working, just running up and down the street and jumping from roof to roof and running along the telephone wires. And it's fascinating the way they behave and forage for things. But at the same time, yeah, they're surprisingly intelligent little critters. But at the same time, I'll be walking a dog, and I've got a dog on a 4-foot leash, and the squirrel stops 7 feet away and stares as the dog lunges and barks. And you kind of go like, squirrel, I think you've been living in the city for too long. Like they're not afraid. Like I'm sorry, if I was walking down the street and like a dragon came around the corner, I would not stand there and stare at it. I would run away. And I feel like squirrels, I don't know what's up with the squirrels around here. The raccoons, they don't come anywhere near the dogs. The chipmunks don't, but the squirrels, they're constantly daring.
Yeah, sure they are. They're cheeky buggers. Yeah, they could probably take over the world if we gave them a chance. Probably do better than Trump. Who knows?
Oh, and there's the politics.
Oops.
Oh, that's quite all right. I've made more than a few allusions to that on this podcast. But
we wish.
So in that kind of case too, and that's something that I think we do need to talk about. Now, I joke a bit about the squirrels, and in the backyard, it is the dog's backyard in my mind. And we've got fencing all around. The dogs are never unsupervised. The squirrels do like to mock them from the fence line sometimes, but again, they'll chase them off the fence. They never come anywhere near the squirrels. But the harassment of wildlife is something that I feel that we need to talk more and more about for dog owners. And that's, I love being in places where the dogs can run and have fun, but also being cognizant of, I don't think just the stress, but then the damage to behavior patterns that dogs can cause. Now, are you seeing animals coming in that you think may have been chased by dogs or grabbed by dogs? Now, we're not talking cats. Cats are a kind of different sociopathic serial killer animals. And I love cats. I'm not going to be pulled into that argument, but no, with dogs, though, is it something that maybe are you seeing the impact of?
Well, with the animals that I work with, sure. We've had squirrels come in that look like adult squirrels that were, mangled and grabbed. And I always blame the Jack Russell Terriers, the ones that are the quick little buggers. And yeah, we get a lot of cottontails and such that have been grabbed, not just by cats, but by dogs as well, obviously. So again, if they're in their backyard, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to monitor, I guess, your own pet in the backyard. How do you deter them from coming in the yard? There's different things you can do, but it's not, something that's written in stone. I think if you're walking on paths, though, I think if you're out and walking on nature trails and stuff, you should have, pretty much your dogs on a leash, or especially this time of year, when it's baby season, just to sort of be aware of your surroundings and know where you are and have respect for where you are,
I think that's very true. Like in our backyard, and of course I would be in so much trouble if I didn't follow what I preach. So, there's no fallen seeds or anything in our backyard.
That's right.
Remove all of that kind of stuff. I do have a veggie box, but it's covered up and everything, and not attracting any animals that I can see. But like I said, if the dogs are in the backyard and a squirrel chooses to run into the backyard, I got to think that he's been having a bad squirrel week.
And he's just daring. He's not wearing his red cape that day. Yeah, no, I know.
So, and that's the unfortunate reality is there will be unavoidable conflict. It's a matter of, I think, measuring that somehow and doing what we can to prevent it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just all about being, responsible pet owner either way, right? Yeah, for sure. And if you're buying that house, like I run into this all the time, buy these people who build their mansions, up on the escarpments, or they build their mansions within beautiful forested areas, but they don't like that den of foxes that's right beside the house that they built their mansion on. You got to kind of wonder, what are you doing? What were you thinking?
Well, and that's
love nature. Why are you there?
Yeah, that's a whole different set of questions for a whole different interview, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's the other chapter in my book, right? Yeah.
Now, I one thing I love talking about wildlife rehabilitators is some of the more interesting stories you may have. Like, in terms of what you've seen come in during spring, trying to keep it sort of thematic here. What are some of the more interesting things that you've come across in terms of animals coming into your care?
Yeah, well, we get pretty much the standard, injured animals. Let's talk about, let's say, a wildlife conflict issue. It was a bunch of baby skunks, for instance, when baby skunk season happens. I got a call from it was pretty much a neighborhood, that was having these sightings of these baby skunks wandering around. And there was about maybe 4 neighbors that were really worried about these baby skunks, thinking that they were orphaned. But as you work with these people, and they would call like 3 or 4 times a day, for maybe, I don't know how long it went on for, 4 days, 5 days, until they finally took my advice, went out beyond the fence line, and actually saw that, that was Mom over there, and that's where the babies were coming from. So it's those kind of situations when it comes to baby season, working with the public as a wildlife rehabilitator, knowing the behavior of the animals and being able to guide them with how to coexist and get to know the animal that they're dealing with is a beautiful thing, especially when it all works out and they're all happy that, okay, the mom's there, they're not orphaned, yes, they are healthy looking, and they're fine, and we'll just leave them be kind of thing. Also results in a nice donation for the Wildlife Center as well, because it's all working with your community to make sure that everybody is doing the right thing, right?
Well, and that's wildlife rehabilitation centers, especially ones like yours, really do become a valuable community resource.
It absolutely is, for sure. My community loves me, and I thank God for Grimsby. I really do. For sure, and my neighbors, yeah.
And in terms of conflict, what would you say are probably the more common ones that you're dealing with? Is it like I'm seeing these babies and the mom's nowhere to be found? Oh my God, or...
It runs the gamut, right? Especially now in baby season, for sure. And right now it's all, like I said, it's everybody finding mama raccoon in their roofs with babies, and how do we deal with that? What wildlife removal company do we call? This kind of thing. I always tell people, if you need a little bit of education, Brad Gates is awesome with his videos on his website. Google him, and that's the only thing I like about Google. There's a few things on Google that actually are really good information, and hopefully you'll find the right wildlife removal company that will help you, with heated boxes and such to keep those babies up on the roof so mom has time to relocate. These people are cutting down their trees, for instance. We have people who make nest boxes, right, for squirrels. So if that tree is knocked down, if mom is still there frantically trying to find a spot to put her babies, come over to the Wildlife Center, pick up a squirrel nesting box, throw a donation at us, you know what I mean, because we buy all the wood and such for it. And we'll teach you how to put that nest box up so mom can relocate her baby safely and everybody's happy, put it back up in the tree kind of thing.
What would you say is the strangest animal that you've ever taken in or taken care of?
Strangest animal.
Strangest.
I had 2 porcupines come in last year through Flamborough.
Really?
Through Flamborough. Yeah. Yeah. One was really, really sick, really neurological, and the other one had an injured back and was subsequently released. She actually made it to the dodo. That was brought in through Hamilton Animal Control. And that's the whole thing, too. We all have great relationships with officers, that work with all these different organizations, the Humane Societies, Lincoln County, Hamilton Animal Control, you name it. And I actually took a little video of this particular porcupine eating, and I posted it, and they wanted to post it, because it's all about PR. It's to show people that, you know what, these people, Humane Society officers, animal control officers, sometimes all get a bad rap, right? But what they have to see is the good stuff that they do. The fact that they're out there trying to help these injured hawks, by capturing them properly and capturing, these injured porcupines, these injured whatever. And so they asked me to actually, forward them that little blurb of a video that I took of this porcupine. So the only way I could figure out how to do it, because I'm not, computer savvy at all, I can email, good luck. But I have a girl who does all my web stuff. Thank God for her. I met her at a Headstones concert, and that's a whole other story. You never know who you're going to meet, right? Thank God for her. She's cool. But anyway, and we were squashed at the front of the stage, and it was really hot. But anyway,
we're talking about animals today. Only wildlife.
You what?
No, we're only talking about wildlife today. No hard rock concerts.
Yeah, no Headstones, eh? No, but hey, they're a good band. But anyway, So I posted this little video on YouTube because it was the only way I could get a link. Do you know what I mean? And so I guess when you post stuff on YouTube, unbeknownst to me, it's out there even bigger, and the dodo picked up on it, and they actually did a little blurb on us, which I thought was pretty cool. I actually got a call from I'm going to say it was a reporter from New York that wanted to do a little story on it. So, and that's how people get to know what you do, and yeah, how you do it.
I do want to talk a little bit about both rabies and distemper with you.
Okay.
Those are two subjects.
Tons of it.
Yeah, in Hamilton, I'd say the Niagara and Hamilton region have been really hot topics in the last year or two. And there has been an outbreak of rabies that I think has come up from the States, where they are not nearly as aggressive in bait vaccines like we are in Ontario. Which is also why it is not really spread that much farther from here. And distemper is also, I don't know if it's on the rise, but I've been seeing more talk of it.
Yeah.
So let's start with rabies. I think that's the one everyone is afraid of ever since Old Yeller. And it's a serious virus.
It'll kill you.
So
bottom line. Yeah. No coming back from that, man.
Yeah. So why do you think it's coming through the raccoon population so heavily right now?
Well, the story is, what everybody's thinking is that because we are close to a border, is that maybe this guy came up on a train or on a truck, the original coon, and this is how, the strain spread again. Used to be, I think I'm going to say it was 1997 when the Niagara region was full of, remember, raccoon rabies strain. I'm going to say it could have been earlier than that. And the Niagara area was a hot spot. Well, they got that finally under control. So unfortunately, if we didn't have that happenstance where the animal control officer did pick up those two dogs, and she did have a raccoon in the back of the truck, and things got out of hand, we never would have known, back in December of 2015 that we had the raccoon rabies strain. I mean, obviously, let's not be ignorant. Rabies is out there, right? It is. It's always been out there. It just hasn't been out there in those numbers. And we did have the raccoon strain under control for many, many years. So that was a huge shock. It was a huge game changer for wildlife rehabilitators as well, who rehabilitate these animals, right? So 284 cases of raccoon strain so far, since December 2015. Working at an animal hospital, I work at Memorial Animal Hospital in Stony Creek as well, full time, and I do that because of the Wildlife Center too, to make sure everybody gets cared for and such. But I'm constantly educating the public on making sure that their pets are vaccinated. Don't mess around with that stuff, because there's so much of it out there. And it's insidious. It really is. Like there's two different types of raccoon rabies, right? You've got the aggressive one and you've got the dumb one. And with distemper, because there's so much distemper out there as well, there's a fine line between those symptoms. You don't know if that raccoon has distemper or rabies.
Yeah, I've seen one raccoon in the full throes of distemper with the seizures.
Pretty sad.
Yeah, it's upsetting to see. It really is.
It is. Yeah, and then of course in the end game you get the ocular discharge and the upper respiratory issues, and
but with rabies, it's not something you would necessarily look at a raccoon and know they have rabies, right? It's not. I guess that's the people perceive it again because Old Yeller and all of the use of rabies in zombie fiction. I don't know if you read about zombies as much as I do, but rabies is often sort of thrown in there, and you think the frothing at the mouth, the uncontrollable aggression, but that's not only what rabies will look like. You could see a raccoon walk down the street who is full of rabies and never know.
No, exactly. Yeah, for sure. It's pretty insidious. It can be, for sure. Again, it's all neurological too, right? So, you're chewing at their limbs, this kind of thing. There's all kinds of neurological stuff that comes with it.
Do you think that this current fear of vaccines, whatever stance someone has on it, could be creating more problems? Like I know right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right now it's very much focused on raccoons. The public relations campaign the city of Hamilton is doing, which I quite like for the most part,
absolutely.
is showing skunks, foxes, bats, raccoons, all the animals that are vector species, and they're really creative. Although they are kind of a little fear mongering, but it's a fine line between fear mongering and reasonable caution. So I'll give them credit though for what they've done. It is very good so far. But do you think, like, is this something that, as a wildlife rehabilitator, as an animal lover, as someone who's worked in a vet clinic, does it concern you seeing, on one hand, this spread of rabies, and it is very centralized still, so it's relatively
isn't
dense.
It, though? Wow, yeah, thank God.
As well, and then on the other hand, you have this fear of vaccination, or people who are choosing not to vaccinate for some pseudoscientific reason. Does this,
exactly.
like, for me, every now and then I'll wake up in a cold sweat and think, oh my God, are my dogs all vaccinated? And of course they are. But, like, is that something that comes to you sometimes as well? Just that, how bad could this get because of these two circumstances?
Oh God, we can go on and on about humans. You know, we can. Like,
every time I try and do a wildlife related podcast or interview, it turns into stuff about people. And I say that both with tongue in cheek, but it's very true. Whether I'm looking at, talking with researchers in the United States about depredation of livestock with predators, or we're talking about, rabies outbreaks. The role of people in these issues is remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely. So from a animal hospital point of view, you have a 1-year rabies vaccine that's good for a year, and you've got a 3-year rabies vaccine that's good for 3 years. Don't mess with it. Just get it done. Be a responsible pet owner. Be that responsible pet owner that when you are walking your pets out, in the bush, that you're watching out for all those babies and you're watching out for any other wildlife that could be out there, but also vaccinate them. Distemper, people are saying, my dog had distemper. I'm even having puppies aren't even getting vaccinated properly, why does he need another booster? Because when they're puppies, they need 3 boosters of distemper, right, in order to get the immunity. And it blows my mind all the time, and then all of a sudden the puppy's coming in with parvo or something. And distemper on label is good for a year, right? And depending on the age of the animal, like some veterinarians might extend it to 2 years, okay? But be consistent with your vaccinations. Get leptospirosis. Hey, you know what? Leptospirosis is always found in raccoon latrines. Any warm-blooded mammal can have leptospirosis in their urine. And we have cases in Hamilton of lepto. You never hear about lepto. That'll kill you too. It's zoonotic to humans. That'll affect you. So, be knowledgeable about it. Be responsible about it. And, keep your animals up to date. If you love your animal, you're going to want to keep them healthy, and you're going to want to keep them safe, And it's the same with, hey, you know what? The way the winter was, we've already had ticks. So love your possums, people, because, possums eat gabillions of ticks. So, every animal has a job on the face of this earth.
Well, and that's, the ticks are the one, too, that I never really thought about before. My wife she's a dog person. I'm technically, you know how this classification system works, right? I'm a pet person. Mm-hmm. She's a dog person.
Right.
So she's very conscious of a lot of these types of things like ticks, and now it's adding in both sort of her knowledge and what I learn about through the wildlife work we do. I like ticks they're scary,
they are, yeah.
And how easily controlled it is if we allow nature to do its job.
Absolutely, and we're once again, we're always messing with that. We always are. Yeah, we're always messing with the balance. So. Yeah, and like I said, possums are awesome, bottom line. Love your garden angels, man,
People who do find animals, and this is, whether you're out with your pet and you find the pinky squirrel or a little raccoon somewhere that your dog sniffs out, or you find an injured bird in your backyard. Something that is very difficult for me to communicate because I don't have the expertise. Why should they not try and care for that animal themselves? And I know it's like that's how a lot of wildlife rehabilitators like yourself end up becoming wildlife rehabilitators.
Yeah.
But there's a reason that you get that extra training and you get through the licensing and everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Regards to the fact that it's illegal to have wildlife in your possession for over 24 hours, right? according to the Ministry of Natural Resources. It's also public safety. You don't know what kind of diseases those animals are carrying. So the last thing we want is to have a wild animal in the hands of a 9-year-old child. Or you'd be amazed at how many parents think it's okay for their daughter to handle that baby raccoon. Raccoons also carry something called Beta-Scarus, which is the raccoon roundworm, which we had a child in Hamilton how many years ago? 5 years ago that went blind from it. So and also they're not educated enough to know, especially if they Google Dr. Google on what to how to take care of that animal and what to feed them. So quite a few baby birds, I was raised on a farm, we always fed them bread. Well, then, the majority of them will die because their crops get full of bread. This kind of thing. So they're not getting the proper nutrition, they're not getting the proper nutrients. And sometimes if you already start them on, great flavored Gatorade with avocados, I could go on and on. Oh, I had baby raccoons brought in on Clamato juice. I thought that was bizarre.
Really?
I'm like, Clamato juice? Where the hell did you find that? They're like, on Google, which I hate. One of these days I'll find out where Dr. Google lives. But
you're gonna hunt down Dr. Google.
Down. But
I want to be there to film that. We'll sell it.
I'll bring you with me. No, you can be the wheelman, man. It'll be a team effort.
Make me an accomplice.
But no, I just kind of looked at them and I said, Clamato juice. I said, thank God you didn't put the vodka in it. Or did you? You never know. I mean, you don't know, right? And so don't do anything. Don't do anything until you talk to a professional, which are wildlife rehabilitators. Keep the baby warm if it doesn't have any hair on it. If obviously, depending on the situation, the mom's not at the tree and she's not around, If you can find our phone numbers, if you can contact us right away, we can guide you through all of that before you do any damage, right? And I know it's human nature to feed everything. It's human nature to coddle everything and try and do the best you can, right? But unfortunately, the majority of the time, if you don't know what you're doing more damage than not, right? And a lot of that damage cannot be reversed. So.
And I guess what's sort of a final message to folks who love wildlife, maybe don't know how to get involved. I mean, for me, myself, I rarely come across injured wildlife. And I know people who, it seems, every day of their life see an injured animal and rescue it.
I know. I get the same people calling me, too. I do.
So
it's bizarre, isn't it? Yeah.
What can people do, though? I mean, if they're interested in wildlife rehabilitation, but, don't have access to the resource, like if someone living next door to you would, or they want to help but aren't really sure how, what would you recommend to someone like that?
You mean to become a wildlife rehabilitator themselves?
Well, either to become a wildlife rehabilitator, to help wildlife rehabilitators, or even just to support the process.
Yeah, well, exactly. If you don't have the resources and you don't have the time to be a rehabilitator yourself, obviously, if you do want to become a rehabilitator, we have courses you can take, like through ORAN, and there's NWRA, which is in the States, the National Wildlife Rehabilitators Association, and the International Wildlife Rehabilitators Council. But also, you have to remember that it's all out of pocket. So anything you can do for your area wildlife rehabilitation facility, anything you can do, donating money. For instance, I just picked up all the formulas for the beginning of the season. The majority of us get our formulas from the States, right, through Fox Valley. And those formulas are made specifically for those species of animal. And they cost about $225 American, for a 20-pound pill. What's that, cost in Canadian money, right? And exactly. And then it's not just the shipping and such on top of it. It's everything else that factors into it, the extra food that you need. It all costs money. So if you can donate online to some, if they do, we do. We have Canada Helps, obviously, and PayPal on our website as well, and I'm sure Chantal does out in Jarvis and the rest of them. Or send them a check, drop them a check in the mail. If you have a rehabilitation facility in your area, it's all up to you to care enough about your wildlife to keep them going. Help them with fundraisers. If you're part of a Lions group, if you're part of a Kinsman group, run a bingo for that facility to help them raise the money to pay for the supplies that they get. Joe Blow is complaining about, our for instance. Well, can you imagine what it's like to run a wildlife facility? A hydro steady. I mean, that washing machine's going, 24/7, right? Never mind the gas for the furnaces to heat stuff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. the bills to run it are immense, and regardless of everything else, to keep that facility going, So, and fundraising is a huge aspect of it.
To learn more about Urban Wildlife Care or get in touch with them, visit urbanwildlifecare.com or check them out on Twitter at urbanwildlifeca or on Facebook. That's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and remember to follow Defender Radio on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can get details of all of those links on this week's Defender Radio blog at thefurbears.com. Until next time, this is Michael Howie for Defender Radio, reminding you to stay informed and stay strong.